and details have been changed, but the justice? The justice is entirely real. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who gets betrayed by their best friend. I thought I knew Marcus. I thought I'd read him right. Turns out, I'd been reading the person he wanted me to see. And the real Marcus had been hiding behind that smile for years. When I finally understood that, it didn't break me. It hardened me. And by the time he understood what he'd done, it was already far too late. We met in our late 20s, both grinding away at the same digital marketing agency, both hungry to do something of our own. We'd stay late after everyone else had gone home, sketching out ideas on napkins and the backs of printed briefing documents, talking about the business we'd build together one day. Those evenings felt electric. There's a particular kind of excitement that comes from planning something with someone you trust completely, and I trusted Marcus completely. He was charming, well-connected, brilliant in a room full of clients, the kind of person who could walk into a room of strangers and leave with 3 new friends and a dinner invitation. I was the engine, strategy, systems, delivery, operations, the invisible architecture that made everything work. We were going to be unstoppable, and for a while, we were. We launched our agency, Meridian Creative, in the spring of 2019. Within 18 months, we had 14 clients, a small team of 7, and a reputation that was growing faster than either of us had expected. I handled everything behind the scenes, the proposals, the project management, the hiring process, the client workflows, the systems that kept the whole machine running day to day. Marcus handled the relationships, the lunches, the industry events, the handshakes, the conference panels. He was the face, I was the foundation, and I was fine with that arrangement. Or I told myself I was. The truth is, there were moments, quiet moments, usually at the end of long days when I was still at my desk at 9 in the evening, finishing something Marcus had promised a client, when a small, uncomfortable thought crept in. I pushed it away. I trusted him. I believed in what we were building together. That was the first mistake. I started noticing small things around the end of year 2. A client I'd spent months nurturing, a property developer called Hartley Group, one of our most promising accounts, went unexpectedly quiet. When I reached out to their contact, she was vague and uncomfortable in a way I couldn't quite explain. A little too careful with her words. A little too quick to end the call. I assumed we'd missed the mark on a deliverable somewhere. I made a note to follow up and moved on. Then another long-standing account, a legal firm we'd worked with since our very first year, quietly declined to renew their contract. The reason given was pursuing other options. That stung, but agencies lose clients. Contracts end. I told myself it was normal churn, part of the business, nothing to read too deeply into. But there was a feeling, low and persistent, like background noise you can't quite source, something I couldn't name yet. What wasn't normal was what Marcus started doing with his schedule. There were meetings I wasn't invited to, not unusual on its own, but the pattern was new. He mentioned a new project briefly and then didn't mention it again. I caught a glimpse of an email address on his laptop one morning that wasn't our company domain, just for a second before he shifted the screen away. He laughed it off when I glanced at it, said it was something personal. Weekend networking that he referenced only in passing, never with details. I chalked it all up to his social nature, his constant hunger to be in every room. I was too busy running the business to look closely. That was the second mistake. The truth came from the most unlikely source, our bookkeeper. She came to me one Tuesday afternoon with a furrowed brow and a spreadsheet, asking whether I was aware that 3 of our largest retainer clients had quietly reduced their monthly payments over the prior quarter. Not cancelled, reduced, as if they were in the process of winding down their relationship with us and simply hadn't announced it yet. She'd noticed the discrepancy across the billing cycles, but had assumed it was a renegotiation I knew about. I did not. I remember closing my office door after she left and just sitting there for a moment, completely still. There was a particular quality to that silence, the kind that comes just before something cracks open and you can't unsee what's inside. That evening, I did what I should have done months earlier. I sat down and went through everything, every contract, every client correspondence, every email thread I had access to. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I found it. Marcus had been running a parallel operation, a second agency, registered as a sole trader under a slightly different name, that he'd been quietly routing our clients toward. He had been taking introductory meetings on our company's behalf, nurturing relationships using our reputation, our infrastructure, our case studies as proof of capability, and then privately positioning himself to those same clients as someone moving to independent practice, presenting himself as their true contact, the one worth following, suggesting gently and strategically that the real quality of the work came from him personally, and that they might consider working with him direct going forward. 2 clients had already fully transitioned to his new entity. 3 more were at various stages of being courted. And when I looked at the proposal documents he'd been sending under his own brand, I had to stop and read them twice. They were our proposals, our templates, our language, our structure, our strategies, rebranded with a different logo and sent out as if they were his own work. There is a specific feeling that comes with that kind of discovery. It isn't simple anger. It's colder than anger. It's the feeling of realizing that something you thought was solid has been hollow for longer than you knew. That the person you built your professional life alongside had been for months quietly dismantling it from the inside. I felt sick. And then I felt something harder and more useful. Clarity. I did not confront him. Not yet. I spent the following 2 weeks doing one thing above everything else, documenting every email thread printed and filed, every invoice cross-referenced with client correspondence, every timestamp logged. I sat at my kitchen table on a Sunday evening with everything laid out and went through it with the kind of methodical care I usually reserved for our best client work. I then had a solicitor review the documentation and give me her assessment. She didn't mince her words. What Marcus was doing constituted a clear, demonstrable breach of our partnership agreement, specifically the non-solicitation and non-compete clauses we had both signed. He had been soliciting our clients while still operating as a partner of the firm. He had been using company resources to build a competing business. He had left a paper trail extensive enough to fill a courtroom folder. She told me I had an extremely strong case if I wanted to pursue it through the courts. I kept that option on the table like a card I hadn't played yet. When I finally called the meeting, I kept it short. I didn't invite him to a coffee or frame it as a casual chat. I told him we needed to talk about the business today. He arrived at the office with the easy confidence of a man who had no idea what was coming. That slightly too relaxed posture of someone who thinks they're still in control of the story. I laid the folder on the table between us, printed, organized, tabbed, indexed. I watched the color drain from his face as he turned the first few pages. He tried to spin it. He said the clients had approached him independently. He said he'd been planning to talk to me about it. He said it wasn't what it looked like. He said a lot of things, and I let him say all of them without interruption, because I had already heard every version of this conversation in my head, and none of them changed anything that was in that folder. Then I slid the partnership dissolution papers across the table and explained very quietly what the alternative to signing them looked like. Because the alternative was court, and I had a solicitor already briefed, and I was entirely prepared to go there. He signed. But here is where the story becomes something more than just a betrayal and a legal document. Because Marcus, in his arrogance, had made the assumption that so many people like him make. He had mistaken the performance of work for the work itself. He believed that because he was the one in the room, the one buying lunches and shaking hands, that he was the reason the clients stayed. He had never stopped to consider that what clients actually valued was the quality of the delivery, the strategy, the execution, the reliability, the results. Everything I had built quietly in the background while he was out being charming. He launched his new agency that autumn with considerable fanfare. He threw a launch event at a venue in the city. He posted on LinkedIn about an exciting new chapter. He had, or thought he had, 6 clients from our former roster ready to anchor the new business. 3 of them came back to me within a month. They told me directly that they had been contacted by me, understood what had happened, and that they valued the working relationship they'd had with Meridian, the real Meridian, the one with the operational capability they'd come to rely on. One of them told me, somewhat apologetically, that Marcus had promised them a level of service in their first meeting with his new agency that had already proven impossible to deliver. The remaining 3 he had fully transitioned didn't last the year either. Without any of the systems, the team infrastructure, the operational processes I had built, the quality of his output collapsed almost immediately. He was essentially a consultant pretending to be an agency, and clients noticed that distinction quickly. The work was late, the communication was inconsistent, and the strategic thinking that had seemed impressive in pitches evaporated when it came time to actually build something. Within 14 months of launching, his agency was dissolved. He went back to employment, a much smaller firm, a role significantly beneath where he'd been. And as far as I'm aware, he's still there. Meridian Creative restructured. I brought in a new business development partner, someone I vetted thoroughly this time, with proper due diligence, clear contractual agreements, and full transparency on every aspect of the business. We recovered every client we'd lost, except one who'd moved overseas. We hired 4 new team members. We invested in the systems I'd always wanted to build, but never had enough time for. By the following spring, we'd had our best revenue year on record. I think about Marcus occasionally. Not with bitterness, That phase was brief and expensive, and I moved through it quickly because I didn't have the luxury of dwelling. I think about what he threw away. He had something genuinely good, something we had built together from nothing but late evenings and napkin sketches and the kind of shared ambition that most people only dream about. And he threw it away because he couldn't bear to share the credit, because he needed to be the reason something worked, and the truth that it worked because of both of us, because of what each of us contributed, was somehow not enough for him. He wanted the glory without the graft. He wanted the name on the door without the hours behind it. He wanted to own something he hadn't built alone. And in the end, he got nothing. There's a lesson in that. Not just about betrayal. Betrayal is as old as ambition. The lesson is about documentation and patience and understanding that the work is never invisible forever. The people doing the real work are never as replaceable as the people trying to exploit them believe. The moment those exploiters try to go it alone, the ground beneath them turns to dust, because what they were building on was never theirs to begin with. I built something real. He built something hollow, and hollow things eventually collapse. If you enjoyed this story, hit like and subscribe for more karma stories every week. End of script. Hero 4, The Cheating Business Partner.